Once again, your tournament champion from Wheaton, Warrenville South, Mark Schmidt.
Sorry, I gave the speech a long time ago, and I don't remember my sources. So, here we go. Watching a President Bush press conference always makes me giggle. You see, he's such a great man, but he can't say nuclear. It's always nuclear. And it's cute, really. But then I realized that George Bush didn't just fail the first grade. George Bush was a very smart political scientist and shrewd man. Because right now, according to the BBC on October 15th, 2007, he's attempting to conclude a civilian nuclear peace deal between the United States and India, one which will allow India to expand its use of civilian technology, itself banned from the United States since it conducted a nuclear test in 1974, while at the same time skirting the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, a basic agreement amongst nations not to use nuclear weapons in tests. It's interesting, really, because the IAEA, or International Atomic Energy Agency, has dozens of references to nuclear proliferation, but it doesn't have a single reference to nuclear proliferation. And then it all made sense. However, given the substantial trade ties that the United States has with India, and given the fact that India, as one of the few stable democracies in southern Asia, represents a potential long-term strategic alliance, it's imperative to ask today's question: can the United States finalize a nuclear energy deal with India before the conclusion of the Bush administration? Rising Pakistani instability. Second, because increased sectarian violence in India. And finally, because a prolific amount of political bickering within the Indian political system will make it impossible for the deal even to get off the ground in New Delhi. But first, it's imperative to understand the situation not simply in India, but also in the entire Indian. Stabilized Pakistan is threatening greater risk of nuclear proliferation across the entire region. And thus, it seems unlikely that the United States, at this most critical juncture, will allow for more nuclear technology to expand into southern Asia. To understand this, it's imperative first to consider the situation in Pakistan. According to The Economist, on January 3rd, 2008, Pakistan is currently a powder keg, which may sound like just a hefty dose of hyperbole, but it's important to understand that since Benazir Bhutto was assassinated and Pervez Musharraf basically destroyed the Pakistani constitution, declaring a state of emergency, the government of Pakistan is on the brink of collapse. And with collapse of the government in Pakistan comes the increased and unfortunately very likely risk that insurgents throughout Pakistan will gain control of their nuclear arsenal. And it is for this most disturbing reason that the Washington Post of December 2nd, 2007 explains that U.S. military analysts in the Pentagon, CIA, and other bureaucratic organizations are furiously trying to conclude some way and to find some manner in which they can secure all of the nuclear technology and material in Pakistan. So, when Pakistan's on the brink of nuclear collapse, why on earth would the United States in its military bodies allow for India, itself near to Pakistan and with a 9% Muslim population, still a country that has substantial links to Pakistan, more nuclear technology? Although Pakistan is not the focus of this speech, one cannot deny the fact that instability in Pakistan makes it unlikely that a democratic-controlled Congress will approve the nuclear peace deal. Since, this being an election cycle, the Democrats are trying to appear tough on national security. And thus, this nuclear deal is likely to go through before the end of Bush's term. However, it's not simply about Pakistan. It's also about the current socioeconomic situation in India. Specifically, increased Indian sectarian violence makes it highly unlikely that there shall be any peaceful conclusion of this nuclear agreement. Indeed, if anything, the tremendous level of sectarian violence in India suggests that the Democratic-controlled Congress, and also the Republicans in Congress as well, will not have much confidence within the Indian government to control such a vital security asset as further nuclear technology. To understand this, it's important first to consider just how rife with conflict and division India is. According to the British Broadcasting Corporation on November 27, 2007, currently, India is dealing with tremendous crises. In one recent case, they recently dealt with a 100,000-strong protest of central Indian tribal peoples against the central government in New Delhi. I know that America doesn't have a very stable relationship with its Native American population either, but in India, this is much more than a matter of a few casinos. Rather, one must pay it for, as the BBC noted on October 16, 2007, 30 people just died in a bombing at a movie theater in Punjab province in India. Thus, India cannot even provide for the basic security of its own citizens, let alone the security of uranium fuel and other nuclear technology in power plants that the United States would provide. And thus, this instability suggests that Congress will not approve this nuclear deal. At least not until another president assumed for a moment that everything was just fine in the United States, that we had all our ducks in a row. Well, even if we had our ducks in a row, the incredible amount of prolific political bickering within the Indian political establishment would, no pun intended, nuke those ducks to smithereens. It's important to understand that even though the nuclear deal makes tremendous political sense and tremendous pragmatic sense for the Indian state, that doesn't always translate to actual politics, because politics usually doesn't accompany reason. To understand this, let's consider the current political structure of India. The Economist of November 22, 2007 notes that currently Prime Minister Manmohan Singh is a member of the Congress Party, and the Speaker of the Indian legislature also a member. These two people have tried their hardest to keep a majority coalition, but since they only have about 45% of the seats in the Indian parliament, they have to form alliances with far left-wing communist parties. However, these communist parties, because of recent personality differences within government, have sworn to their supporters that they will block this nuclear deal. It makes no sense, but that doesn't really matter. For, as according to The Economist of December 13, 2007 notes, the Congress Party and Manmohan Singh don't simply have to contend with their own problems on the left, they also have to deal with the Bharatiya Janata Party on the right, that they disagree with anything Manmohan Singh says, even if in the case of a civilian nuclear deal, it's in the nationalist self-interest of India. Thus, it's apparent that this political infighting within India will destroy any agreement from being ratified. And since it looks unlikely that this agreement will be ratified in Washington either, we can safely conclude that this nuclear deal will not come to fruition. So, when returning to today's question, can the United States finalize a nuclear energy deal with India before the conclusion of the Bush administration? The